Bean Dad, The Dress, 30 to 50 Feral Hogs. If you knew what any of those were, you spend too much time online. And hey, I do too. 16th Minute of Fame is a new weekly podcast hosted by me, Jamie Loftus. And every week we take a closer look at an internet character of the day. Who are they? What made them so notorious? How did the internet or the algorithm choose them? And what does a person do when they're suddenly confronted with more attention than the human psyche can handle? Listen to 16th Minute of Fame on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's brand new, Season 2. I'm Marissa Thalberg.
And I'm Stephen Wolf-Bedeta, and we're excited to be back having bigger, bolder, and always real conversations.
Straight from the C-suite front lines of marketing, media, and more.
We have great friends joining from people you may know, like Vilmer Valderrama and Bobby Burke.
And people you'll want to know. So grab a coffee or, hey, even an Aperol Spritz and come join us on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart.
Listen to brand new on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Every week on Talk Easy with Sam Fragoso, I invite an artist, writer, or politician to come to the table and speak from the heart in ways you probably haven't heard from them before. Some of my favorites are with Tom Hanks, Questlove, and Cate Blanchett. In recent weeks, I talked to actor Dan Levy, director Ava DuVernay, and the editor of The New Yorker, David Remnick. You can listen to Talk Easy on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 407, Identifying Healthcare Overbilling with Scott Speranza.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And we got a sexy little episode for you today about medical healthcare overbilling.
So it's too hot to handle.
It's so hot. It's spicy. I know you guys are going to love it. This is a topic that is worth your time to know. And it's also worth your time to know when it's not worth your time. So we're really excited to chat with Scott, and he's a CEO of HealthLock, and you don't always know what you're getting with CEOs. Sometimes they know how to run a business, but they don't know all about the service that they're running. But Scott was very knowledgeable, so you're going to get a lot out of this episode.
I have come across my own medical billing issues. So anytime we're able to talk about this, it feels like true, tangible, helpful resources just for me. I hope that that's the case for you guys as well. And yeah, Scott's really helpful, and also just a lot of commiserating. If you find yourself tuning into this episode and you're just like, this is so much, there's that for you too in this episode. Oh, also, side note, Scott is in Tennessee, and there was a tornado warning happening. So as we get closer to the bill of the week, you might hear some sounds that our editors can't remove. We decided not to end it with Scott, but to let the winds blow as they will, and we will power through.
Yeah. So let the winds blow as they will. But first,
you are forewarned.
But first, this episode is brought to you by tubes. Tiny little tubes they put in your child's ear because they keep getting ear infections, and the doctor won't give you any more antibiotics because you've tried all of them multiple times. It's something called antibiotic resistance is a factor. Anyways, you never know when you're going to need tiny tubes. So the minute your baby gets their first ear infection, you should probably start saving for them in a high-yield savings account like CIT. CIT's Savings Connect account is currently offering 4.65% APY, which will be helpful if you are duped into seeing a doctor who only does their surgeries in a hospital. We'll talk about that later. Actually, it actually won't cover the upcharge, so you should definitely ask where they do their tube surgeries before you make that first appointment. Anyways, frugalfriendspodcast.com/CIT, because hospitals and children and stuff like that are expensive and you should save for them.
Speaking of a lot of commiserating in this episode,
right? That is my only commiserating. We're giving you information
while also complaining about our own experiences.
Nobody's perfect. Some people get stressed and make stress-based financial decisions. But if you're making 80% of your decisions out of a place of health, then the 20% that are made out of stress are not as impactful. There you go. Bam. That's the episode.
You got there.
See you next week. I'm just kidding. If you are interested in more healthcare related content, episode 358, Jill and I share our personal experiences with healthcare sharing because we both use healthcare sharing instead of insurance. It's a really whatever works for you thing. And if you don't know if it'll work for you, episode 358 is the one to listen to. Episode 230, Negotiating Medical Bills with Dr. Virgie Bright Ellington, is also kind of required listening for this podcast. That's one of our most popular episodes. Dr. Virgie is a doctor and patient advocate. She wants you to spend as little for her services as a doctor as possible. And so this is all about negotiating your medical bill. Super, super useful, episode 230. And so today's is with Scott Speranza, the CEO of HealthLock. HealthLock is a cutting edge disruptor in healthcare billing and fraud protection. And as the chairman and CEO of HealthLock's parent company, Inassist, he's led both companies to audit over $500 million in medical claims and saved members more than $130 million over the past decade through all the innovative technology and monitoring HealthLock is coming up with. So we are sure that you're going to get some useful information out of this one.
Let's do it.
Scott, welcome to Frugal Friends. This is going to be a good episode. I know this is going to be one that people ask about and talk about because our last medical bill episode was one that people asked about and talked about for a long time. So we're super excited to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here. I appreciate it. And yeah, we all have medical bills. So of course, we're all going to encounter that wonderful healthcare system that we have, which is fantastic. But boy, those bills can be a real pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. It's one of those episodes where if it's not front of mind, people will just keep scrolling. But for those tuning in, there's a real reason that they're here and can bring a lot of uncertainty and anxiety and just financial frustration. So from your perspective and the work that you've done, can you kind of outline for us what you've seen are some of the most common medical billing errors?
Sure. And, even before we jump into that, you just said the word anxiety. And most people don't know that especially pre-COVID, a large medical bill was the number one anxiety for American consumers, more than like losing my job or the economy and so forth. And that has shifted a little bit, but the number one stress financially, or as it relates to healthcare, is the out-of-pocket expenses that you pay, not your premiums, but your out-of-pocket expenses. And so those are the things that we look at. So when you think about what does overbilling look like, it's, look, first, the statistics say it all. There were 40% or more of medical bills have errors. It could be a coding error. It could be a duplicate service. It could be a balance bill. There's all these different things that can occur. But the statistics say that we're kind of set up for it. The most glaring one is a denial of benefits. So where my insurance just says, we're not going to pay this bill. And of course, you owe 100% of that out-of-pocket expense. And about 20% of Americans or more are going to get a denied bill this year. A denial of service from their carrier. That's 20%. That's a major part of the market. There's like 40 million denied claims a year. So you've got this, kind of think of it like the tax-based system. So we have, accountants and tax advisors and specialists that every year look at our financials, look at the laws, the codes, all the parameters that it takes to do your taxes. And that expert then deciphers what potentially you owe in taxes, or of course you recoup. Well, the medical code language, the CPT ICD-10 coding language, actually has 100,000 lines of code. It's almost more complex than the tax system as it relates to the legalities. And so you have all these codes that then represent a line item task, which then represents a financial dollar amount. And then all these codes come together and they create the actual bill that's adjudicated with the carrier. And then, of course, whatever you might owe. And the third-party statistics say that there's $325 billion lost every year from overbilling and fraud. It's a major problem, and it affects all of us.
Wow.
Yeah, that is anxiety producing,
Oh my
especially
gosh.
when it's a medical bill. So you're doing something that you aimed at health. I want to repair something that's broken or fix something that's going on that comes with its own anxieties. And then to feel like you're up against the system that can feel so just mysterious, like all the CPT codes and the ICD-10 that you're listing out. It's like, do we have to be experts on this
Well, it's
in order?
technically the only service I can think about where we don't know what we're going to pay before we get our service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is, by the way, for medical, dental, vision, RX, right? So all those things are healthcare expenses. And, but of course, we might go to the drugstore and we think we're going to get a $15, copay for our RX. And all of a sudden they want to charge $750. What happened here? And now I'm stuck in line and I've got this big bill and it's stressful. And you just never know what's going to happen because it's a complex system. And again, especially when it relates to adjudicating against assurance. So adjudication is that word that says, an occurrence, a medical occurrence, medical, dental, vision, RX, a healthcare occurrence has happened. And I have insurance. And so someone's going to go bill my insurance company first and say, well, how much money is the insurance company going to pay me for the service? And everybody's got a different price. Everyone's got different negotiated rates. And then that claim gets adjudicated. And then I receive that wonderful thing called an explanation of benefits, an EOB. And that EOB basically says, this is not an invoice, but this is potentially what you owe. And then, of course, you've got the doctor, provider, lab, whatever it might be, actual invoice. A lot of times those don't match. And of course, what we're finding is that there are errors, unfortunately, that are made, whether they're simple, complex, whether they're nefarious or just, simple mistakes. All those things we see, and we've now saved well over $130 million for our customer base. And we have stories after stories of people maybe literally save them from bankruptcies because 66% of all bankruptcies in the United States are due to medical bills. So it's not something that's actually getting better. It's actually getting worse.
Wow. So in addition to the denial of benefits, would you say the top overbilling errors that you see like most often with people?
Sure. So the first thing would be just a charge that's outrageous, right? So like, a bill that might be 100, 200, 300% over what we see as market value. Your MRI might be the simplest, right? Some MRIs might be $500, some are $1,000, some are $2,500. Why? What's the reason for the price difference? If there was something specific that was that you received in the MRI that caused that, that's one thing. But for the most part, there's a lot of parity now with MRIs. So if we see a bill that comes in at 100%, 200%, 3% over our market price, that's going to get flagged. That's a common overcharge. You have things like duplicate service where one doctor came in and said, hey, how you doing? And then another doctor came in a while later and said, hey, how are you doing? And there's two doctor codes on there for visits that could equate to, of course, a much larger bill. When did I check into the emergency room? That's a big deal, right? So if I check in before a certain period of time, at my 24 hours, those change the rates. There's things called upcoding. I go into an urgent care and I need a Band-Aid for my cut, but they mark it as level 5, which means my neck is profusely bleeding. And these are the codes that they use. And of course, what you're seeing in the news today, this is a very common, unfortunate practice from the providers and even the carriers. What we've seen with Change Healthcare and the UHC debacle, data breach, is a lot of billing issues now are being exposed for fraudulent billing potentially. So, the system's a good system. So I want to make sure that that's clear. I love our system. We're a supporter of the US-based healthcare system. I think it's the best in the world for 1,000 reasons. But it's complex. It's a $6 trillion industry segment, one of our largest. And there's a lot of moving parts and everybody gets care. And for the most part, our care is super good, but that billing can be super complex and unfortunately fraudulent. The latest statistics is there's 171 million patient records breached last year. The year prior, there was about 60 million. The year prior to that, there was, I think, about 20 million. The year prior to that was just a few million. So the thieves have really moved over to healthcare and taken it by storm. and a fraudulent bill, which is also a balance bill. So one of the other keys is if you get a bill, your EOB says you owe $100 and you get a bill for $500, or you were never supposed to get a bill and you got a bill. Well, what is that? And I've got some examples on that. So balance bills, upcoding, denial of benefits, obviously something that is just completely out of whack as far as the pricing is concerned. These are the things that a consumer needs to have awareness around so they can protect themselves in their pocketbooks.
Yeah, I was looking up this list in preparation for this episode, and there were things on there that I had no idea. As much as I will look at itemized bills and stuff for when I take my kids to the doctor, like they're just things like the time you check into a hospital, whether they charge it as a 24-hour or if they're just tacking on 15 minutes here and there. Like I realize like there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to healthcare, and it just takes like one or two bad eggs to like really do some destructive damage.
Yeah. You hear the stories about, the $1,000 aspirin that from a hospital, or of course, we just talked about the time you check in emergency care and so forth. And certainly, hospital care is going to create potentially the largest bills. But, the average American spends, I think it's about $6,000 of out-of-pocket expenses. Now, some people, go, well, I'm not sick, and they don't plan for an expense. And so, maybe they spent $0 last year, but how do you know you're not going to spend $10,000, $20,000 this year? We don't know when we're going to have that medical care. And the statistics also say that's not just hospital bills. The problem is really pervasive. It's from the drugs, it's your labs, it's the doctor visits that all of a sudden, I went in for my preventative maintenance, and that was supposed to be zero charge. And then all of a sudden I got a $400 bill from the labs. What happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, it may be for your best, it might be for your best care, but if you didn't approve that, that's a problem. And that's a surprise bill that probably is an unplanned expense. And these are the things that add up. And then, of course, for a large percentage of folks, they end up in bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm. So where do we find these errors? Where do we go to look for them? And how are they hard to recognize? How do we even recognize them?
Well, I came from the software space. And so me coming into the healthcare space 10 years ago, I was really eyes wide open going, well, it's got to be pretty simple and straightforward, right? Analytics and billing and codes and right, this thing's got to be pretty simple. Well, it's not. And even from my perspective, and we have lots of doctors and nurses as clients as well. Like they're in the industry and they're like, yeah, I get confused too. And so, sure, you first of all, you've got to be able to understand medical terms to a certain extent. You've got to understand, what kind of care am I getting? What kind of service is that producing? And then, of course, you got to know the codes. So how do you know the codes? How do you tell if a code, like our analytics show codes that either shouldn't be there or should be there? Those are flags. How does the average consumer do that? It's very, very difficult. And so what you want to be able to do is really trust your provider up front and ask as much as possible what they think this is going to cost. They will have a difficult time answering that because, again, it could be, well, we don't know exactly what kind of care you're going to receive. We don't have your insurance in front of us. We don't know the negotiated rates. We don't know in the end if you're going to need lab A, lab B, or lab C. So we can't tell you, but it might cost anywhere between $500 and $1,000. And certainly try to get as much upfront as possible. The other thing is don't pay upfront. So we recommend to our customers that, let the process play out both with the provider, the carrier, and us, quite frankly, in our service, because there could be things that of data's missing, an analytic catches an error, a denial becomes a partial denial, or potentially gets overturned because it's just a lacking of information. So the average consumer really has a tough place here. I mentioned those claim denials. So 20% of Americans are going to get a denied claim. Only 1% are appealed. Only 1%. And of that, 2 out of 3 people lose. Our success rate is 68%. Why? Well, because it would be like, as an average amateur, if I had a dispute and went to court and said, hey, judge, this just seems like too much money. Can you please have them pay? I would lose. But we're able to go and say, hey, these are the codes that were used. These are the codes that should have been used. This is the average pricing. And this is why this charge was not only too expensive, but that benefit should have been covered by insurance. And here's the other cases that we've done, that we've been a part of, to go ahead and affirm that this is a benefit that should actually be approved and paid for by your insurance. How does the average consumer do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's a tall order. So we're really caught. Whether you're the CEO of a company down, you are in the same boat, or a doctor, a nurse, like we talked about. Mm-hmm. You're in a complex system from a billing perspective. You're in the best care in the world. You're going to get to the right service, to the right doctor, at the right place. But there could be a lot of complexity on the billing side that we just don't have the skill sets to manage.
It sounds like calling as much as you can ahead of time to get some of those estimates is kind of utmost importance for an individual to be able to kind of compare and contrast versus just receiving the bill on the back end. You might not know what you're even looking at. What's standard costs? Should I have expected this or not? And that might be where some people even can get tripped up. Like, I guess I have to pay it because I didn't even know what the costs might have been. Mm-hmm. I didn't check beforehand.
And there's things, they call them price transparency tools. It's kind of Expedia online, right? So we go to, an Expedia online, we can buy our flights, our hotel, because it's very standardized. I can understand the quality and I can understand the location. So tools like that are coming, but only about 1% of folks use those, and they don't cover all things. Again, go back to the hospital. If I'm going from, in an emergency situation to a hospital, how do I know up front via an Expedia what I'd have to pay for that hospital care? So those tools and systems will never be able to manage healthcare pre-costs, if you will, or prepayments like an Expedia does for travel.
I recently came upon this. There is a law that medical facilities are required to have price transparency somewhere on their website. Not everybody is in compliance with that. There is a deadline for coming into compliance with it. And a lot of it is based on self-pay rates. And I had to dig. The website did not want me to find it, but eventually I found it. Yeah. And even there was a website I was able to use, at least for Florida, being able to kind of type in the zip code and what are kind of the standard amounts for these standard types of procedures within the county that I live in, within the state that I live in. And personally, I found that really helpful just to kind of get my head around what can I expect to be paying for certain things. But of course, as you're describing, that's only if you have the luxury of knowing what's coming versus an unexpected emergency situation and you can't be calling ahead. You are kind of stuck with the bill on the back end.
Yeah. Legislatively, the word transparency has definitely been in the news for the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, and having providers post their prices, having carriers post their negotiated rates. There's the No Surprise Bill Act that came out, of course, and that was trying to mitigate a much larger problem. There's holes in that, of course, and there's also issues with the process. It's 8, 9, 10 months behind, and so yes, there seems to be more. Show me more so I can navigate better. But as you mentioned, right, where is it on the website? What does it really mean? There could be 1,000 line items on there, and I've got to try to find out what my care is going to be, and then that price point. It's very, very difficult. And I don't think it's going to be answered by one technical solution for the consumer to be empowered to then say, okay, I'm in control of all this. Now I feel comfortable. It's just too complex.
Bean Dad, The Dress, 30 to 50 feral hogs. If you knew what any of those were, you spend too much time online. And hey, I do too. 16th Minute of Fame is a new weekly podcast hosted by me, Jamie Loftus, where every week I take a closer look at an internet character of the day. Who were they? What made them so notorious? Why did the internet choose them? And what does a person do when they're suddenly confronted with more attention than the human psyche can handle? I'll be talking to internet historians, experts, and yes, the main characters themselves to get a fuller picture. Because I think that even outside individual experiences, a character of the day tells us something about how the internet worked at that time and how the attention economy developed into the freaky three-headed dragon it is today. Together, we probably won't be able to properly log out, but we can take a walk down scary internet memory lane and see one day a little more clearly. Listen to 16th Minute of Fame on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi there, I'm Bob Pittman, Chairman and CEO of iHeartMedia. I'm excited to announce a new season of my podcast, Math and Magic, Stories from the Frontiers of Marketing. Our guests this season remind us to embrace change and fearlessly look toward the future. Like Andrew Jarecki, award-winning filmmaker and creator of MoviePhone.
The studios didn't really control the theaters didn't control the studios. And I thought, well, there's a window in here where I could make things easier for the consumer and also make something that would be very useful for the industry.
Or Kellen Kenny, Chief Marketing and Growth Officer at AT&T, who installed fiber in customers' houses rather than leading from afar.
It is so crucial that you spend time with the customers. That is the best lesson.
In these exciting times, we're looking to the math, the strategy and analytics, and the magic, the creative spark, more than ever. Listen to a brand new season of Math and Magic on our very own iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Hey, I'm Jay Shetty, and I'm the host of On Purpose. On Purpose's mission is to create impactful conversations to help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. This week, I talked to Tiffany Haddish in a hilarious, deep, thoughtful interview where we dive into family trauma, grief, sobriety, love, and dating. You'll be laughing, crying, and have so many impactful takeaways after this interview.
I had this homie loving friend for a long time. He's very disrespectful to me, very kind of messed up to me. But in my mind, we could get married. We had the most beautiful babies. He handsome, I'm pretty. It would be so cool. He's smart and intellectual. I'm kind of smart, I think. It would be fun. We have the best conversations. We have fun, but then he would treat me like crap.
Listen to On Purpose with Jay Shetty on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Trust me, you won't want to miss this one.
So if we do find an error, if we do believe this seems like more than what it should be, we've been able to kind of call ahead, we're comparing the back and forth, or it's post-emergency situation, but it looks like they are trying to tack on too much. What can we do? What are our steps to be able to dispute some of those medical overbilling errors?
Well, of course, if you've got a denial of benefit, your insurance company is not going to pay for either partial or full of the care that you've got, then you definitely want to do an appeal. That appeal process is very specific to the carrier. So a UHC versus an Anthem, is going blue versus a Blue Cross are going to have different forms, policies, procedures to go ahead and do the appeal. So you do have to learn that. Classically, you may have to go through 2, 4, 6 different levels of denial and then reappeal in order to get approvals. We've got some famous cases of actually some pretty famous people. We also have a lot of actors, directors, producers as clients. And so, some of those folks get surgeries. We had one that was pre-approved for $100,000, pre-approved, got the surgery, came back, and then all of a sudden they turned around and said, no, we're going to deny that service and owed $100,000. And it took us over a year, I think it was 6 or 7 appeals to finally get that overturned. So the appeal process, definitely. And then it's a matter of you got to work with your provider first. So they're the ones that are controlling your out-of-pocket costs. They're the ones that are going to be delivering to you a bill. They're also the ones that have the collection agencies after you. And 53% of all credit issues are medical related. So they're going to put a lot of pressure on you to pay that bill. But work with them to really explain why this is how did you get this charge? How was this fee produced? What's the reason my insurance company isn't paying? How much did my insurance company pay to the provider? That's a really key question. If I had a $1,000 bill and my provider paid $600 and my balance bill was $500, obviously there's something wrong there. And so those are the things that you've got to kind of break down what these charges are. And then ultimately go back to the carrier. If you feel, look, I went in there, this is a classic case. So, we had twins, and every 6 weeks we had to go get a sonogram. My wife did. And so we'd go get the sonogram, and it was a $1,200 charge, and the insurance company would pay $1,000, and then we get a bill for $200. And HealthLock would say, no, that you don't owe that $200. And literally the billing company would say, oh, we're so sorry, it's an error, we'll fix it. 6 weeks later we go, and what happens? The exact same $200 balance bill. And so at that point, HealthLock would report that. That is something that we would consider fraudulent. That's a billing company taking advantage of balance billing. And whoops, I'm so sorry. And if 20, 30, 40% of the people pay that $200, that's free money to the billing company. By the way, the billing company is paid by a percentage of revenue they collect for the doctor or hospital. So they're motivated for maximum dollars, of course, collected. And the doctors and hospitals just look at their balances and say, oh, fantastic, I got paid. I can pay the bills this month, but they're not necessarily the ones that are doing the balance billing. It's these third-party billing companies that are really at fault in this whole process. So work with those three things, right? The appeals process, your provider, and breaking down those charges, and then back to the carrier if you feel like there's something suspicious happening or consistent happening with your provider. And they can also provide pressure and police them as well.
I think that's one of the things for me in even knowing who do I go to with this, because the system does feel so large and complex. It's who's the right person to call. And sometimes I can find myself getting bounced around of, no, that's an insurance issue. No, that's your provider issue. No, that's a you issue. and that can take so much time. You have to have so much stamina, but it's helpful to hear you say, beginning with the provider, getting as much information as possible and really digging in is the place to start. That's helpful. And are we primarily talking with the billing department of the medical provider?
Well, and that's also, part of it too, is that when you call the doctor's office to schedule an appointment, you're talking to somebody that's working in the doctor's office. Most of the time, if not all the times, these billing companies are working outside of the physical office. They might be managing dozens and dozens of doctors. And so that's a different number. It's a different person. It's a different person every time you call in. And so anytime that a person, in our world, we hear stories, part of the value is just, I don't have to do that. I don't have to spend the time to call. Forget that I might not even know what to say because I don't have the expertise, but just that time it takes of being on hold and getting the right person and walking through the process and asking all the right questions. And yeah, it's a third party. And I would say probably about 70 to 80% of, there's 1 million plus practitioners out there, plus the hospitals and so forth. You're talking about a lot of workforce. Most of those use an outsourced billing company. And so you are working with that third party.
Mm. So is it important? I know when we did our last negotiating like medical bills episode, I didn't realize how important getting an itemized bill was, because they don't send you the itemized bill, right? They just send you, this is the money you owe, or it says, this is not a bill. This is just theoretical money that you might owe. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Like, how do we get an itemized bill? And are there any things that we should be looking on that bill specifically for?
Yeah. So, an itemized bill is super important, again, when you're going to a hospital stay. It's you're talking about the complexity times 10 to 20 versus obviously a primary care physician or a lab. Even if you're in some level of chronic care, there can be a consistency that gets created. You go to a hospital for some kind of issue, urgent or not. And I don't think many people know that most of the staff that works at a hospital is outsourced. They're not necessarily paid by the company of the hospital. They are a part of potentially 10, 15 different companies and service providers. Some of those doctors are on staff with the hospital, but a lot of the support staff is not. That creates billing complexity, and that's why it's hard to necessarily sometimes get an itemized bill, because they're aggregating the billing from lots of third parties that are at that hospital. But so for sure, at a hospital, absolutely get the itemized bill. We've talked about things that if you don't see something that you recognize, you got to ask a question and figure out, well, what was that service? Mm-hmm. Like what occurred for that line item? What's the reason these prices look expensive? And again, if you look up those prices and you get a national average, you're equipped to then go ahead and have a little more substance when you're speaking to somebody. That's, again, hard to do. And then, of course, if you've got, any type of questions, you can go in and actually see an advocate at a hospital. You can go into the doctor's office and sit down with one of the folks. Obviously, that's a lot of time, and just have them continue to explain what's the reason for these costs. Unfortunately, the equation is time and expertise.
Mm-hmm.
The more time I put into something, the better questions I can ask. The better questions I ask, the better I can uncover what really the problem or issue is. But there's only so much limitation I can do. If I was, not a trained lawyer, time and effort is only going to get me so far. And so having specialists help us is really the only solution that we can see that's really going to make a difference in people's outcomes over the long term specifically.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I do agree. It's so complex, and it is intentionally designed to be complex. So that leads us to our last question. So, what does HealthLock do to help patients through this process, and how could people get it for free?
So HealthLock's a digital platform that actually manages all of your medical bills for you. So this is technology that only we have. And so we sync with your carriers. Let's say it's Anthem. You enroll, our platform then syncs with the Anthem, let's say, platform. And now we're automatically retrieving the explanation of benefits. We're looking at the charges through our analytics. This is all automated. $500 million of claim processing to create these proprietary analytics to then tell you good to pay. So you get a verified check mark that says, hey, pay that $400 in confidence because against your insurance, market prices, we don't see any fraud. There weren't any medical data breaches at this in the last year. Go ahead and pay that bill with confidence. Or we flag it because the analytics are saying something's not right. The price is too much. The coding isn't matching up correctly. There's codes that shouldn't necessarily be in this. And then, of course, you had a denial of benefits. And, we, of course, go through and supply the appeal for you. We do all the resolution. And again, that's where we get this, 68% of the time we're successful in those appeals. So HealthLock is really a one-stop shop. We actually break it up into savings, control, and privacy. So, of course, we want to save you money. And that's where we're, every day we're seeing savings. And again, over this $130 million to date. But then also controls, right? Peace of mind. People don't have to go and call the doctor, the carrier, the billing company. They just need to look and see what HealthLock says as far as verified or flagged, right? And so what we see from our folks is that they just wait for us to tell them when to pay. And that's what we meant about not paying the bill up front. Let HealthLock go ahead and go through its audit and ensure that transaction is accurate, correct, and fair, and then go ahead and pay the bill. And then we also have the only 24/7 monitoring of doctors and facilities and labs and so forth for data breaches, HIPAA violations, malware attacks. And so, as this crime is increasing, we have solutions for medical identity theft. Obviously, we talked about the fraud, medical fraud, and this monitoring of your privacy to ensure that your doctors are abiding by HIPAA 100%. And that's becoming a really important issue for folks. So privacy, control, and savings, that's what HealthLock delivers. And we've got some really nice, references, case studies, and all those kinds of things. But people just love the fact that it gives them peace of mind. I just wait for HealthLock to tell me what to do.
That's beautiful. There are two things in this life that I constantly say, I wish someone else could do this for me. The first is cook. I want someone else to just cook all my meals for me, nutritious food that's tasty, and then fight all my battles, primarily with medical bills.
Fight my battles.
Because it does take so much time, energy, stamina, know-how, time. And I often bemoan, how do people have time for this? How do they even know where to begin? And to have a resource like this that is doing a lot of that for you, not just identifying it, but also kind of getting into the weeds on how do we rectify it is amazing. And
Yeah, it's been a great journey. So we started with the high net worth entertainment space. I started the company in Los Angeles and now in Nashville. We've got, offices, Phoenix, Nashville, whatever it might be, Los Angeles. And we have thousands of actors, directors, producers, let's say that high net worth folks that have been enjoying our services for years. We've got names that everybody would know. We've saved $10,000, $20,000. I mentioned the $100,000 case. We just saved someone over $200,000. HealthLock is the ability to take this to the masses. And so with our relationship now with MasterCard and other third party, large names that are coming, we're now able to get this service out to the masses and for everybody, regardless of your economic status, to be able to be protected by HealthLock. And we use that word protected because we think if you're getting overcharged, that's a protection that you need, somebody standing in the gap to make sure that your finances are protected. And yes, medical identity theft and fraud and those kind of things we resolve as well. But we're there to protect your pocketbook. And so HealthLock for the masses now has been just really exciting and fulfilling.
That's amazing. So how can people access it if it is becoming more accessible for the masses? You mentioned MasterCard. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, sure. So healthlock.com, right? So, health and at LOCK.com. And you can have your account set up. It takes just a few minutes. We actually sync and download up to the last 2 years of your medical bills first from the carrier, and we'll verify all of those. The analytics will go through and say, hey, you spent this much the last 2 years. That's an eye opener. A lot of folks don't really realize what they spent out of pocket. And then these are all the ones that were verified. Those were good to pay, but you've got some flags, and most people have flags. We actually send this really nice automated 45-second video that says, hey, Jill, you had, 25 claims that were in the system. We verified 20 of those, 5 were flagged. Here's what the 5 flagged are. Go ahead and would you like us to open up a case? And so we can go backwards and recover lost money. It was very exciting for our folks.
Love lost money, finding it again.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, when you go to the doctor, and you might forget about us, right? It might be 6 months, 12 months down the road. But remember, we're monitoring that automatically. So we tell you, hey, Jill, by the way, you went to the doctor, that $500 bill, verified, pay it. Or Jen, that $1,000 bill, we flagged it. Do you want us to try to lower it? So we're always behind the scenes looking out for you automatically. You're not taking a picture of your bill and sending it over to us. I remember I got this service called HealthLock that I'm paying for. Let me go ahead and send it in. Now, this is all automated and it's all there, leveraging technology so you can have your peace of mind.
Do you have to have...
HealthLock.com. Now, when you go there, you have a MasterCard. MasterCard just did a press release, and we're now available to all 60 million MasterCard holders in the United States. And you can go in, you get a free, not only 90-day trial, but you get fraud remediation, protection and remediation for life. So if there's a bill like this balance bill, or some a billing company stole your information and used it to create bills, and that ended up on your medical record, or a bill was produced that went unpaid because you never knew it existed, and that ended up on your credit report, HealthLock takes care and resolves all that for you.
Yeah.
And as a MasterCard cardholder, you get that benefit for life.
That's
so it's been a very, very exciting relationship with us, and a way for us to be able to now tell the masses, hey, there's a solution out there for a very complex problem, and it's really simple and easy.
Yeah, you just go, literally, I'm on the website, and if you are a MasterCard holder, you just put in and get it, and you get that on. And so if you have a MasterCard in your wallet, this is where to go right now. Yeah. You already have HealthLock.
You're searching for credit cards. This could help.
This could help
the decision on that one.
And if you're
that's the MasterCard partner with HealthLock, because they saw that there just isn't a really pervasive, ubiquitous healthcare service offering. And when they saw ours, they were just like, this is fantastic. They spent a year vetting us for security, all of our analytics, and then of course came out with, we're going with HealthLock. And now we're offering it to their 60 million cardholders in the United States. So it's very exciting for us.
Peripheral question.
Yeah.
Do you have to have traditional medical insurance, or would HealthLock work with like a medical sharing plan?
Yeah, great question. So I've got a very good friend, Gary, who has a health share. And he, just normally waits for the health share to go ahead and either, tell him that it's okay to pay, or he's responsible for those first dollars out. and signed up for HealthLock. And in his particular case of a health share, he did have to take a picture and submit it. We have that in our app. So if there's no carrier connection, we have almost 300 carrier connections, and there's about 310, I think, total carriers. So we can automate the health shares. We're working on that automation, but you can say, did you hear that?
Yes.
Lightning.
Oh, wow.
It's okay. There's just tornado warnings here. It's not that. But so for the health share, or if you don't have insurance, the people who don't have insurance are the most vulnerable. They've got no coverage at all. So in that case, sign up for HealthLock. You can't automatically connect in because you don't have insurance or have a health share. But you can still take a picture of that invoice, send it in to us, and we'll do the same audit. And Gary saved $3,500. And so that was really exciting, and it really opened up the health share world to us that we think is very important.
Mm-hmm. You know what else is opening up worlds?
And is super important and usually is done for us, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
The Bill of the Week.
That's right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
Well, we better hurry up and get to the Bill of the Week because the lights are about to go out over here.
All right, Scott, really quickly. Every week we invite our guests and we yell at them and ask them to share their bill with us. And we can't wait to hear yours.
Well, so I was thinking about this, and there's a gal that's 36 years old named Jessica, and she, very healthy, really had never had a big occurrence, had a little bit of, something on her head, went into the doctor, said the insurance is going to take care of it. And of course, she got a $30,000 balance bill. And HealthLock, of course, flagged it. And by the way, it wasn't just the fact that she got that bill. That's a big bill for her. So in her income bracket, $3,000 of unplanned expense was a big bill. And so her panic, first time really experiencing the healthcare system, obviously now she's getting married and she's going to experience with kids the true healthcare system. But for her, it was that first time. And so I can't tell you how happy she was because she had HealthLock. And we resolved that issue for her because it was an unfair balance bill. It went to zero. And she couldn't be more happy. So Jessica's 36 years old, just starting a family. HealthLock obviously provided that benefit for her. As you go into more care, unfortunately, you are going to get that magical word bill, and HealthLock can help you with all your bills.
That's beautiful.
That's great.
Just really helping people and then plug in HealthLock. Well done, Scott. Well done. If you all listening, if you all listening have a bill that you want to submit, if you're like Jessica, who didn't end up needing to pay her medical bill anymore because of resources available to her, or your name is Bill and you're just out here living life,
call up
frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. Leave us your bill.
Bean Dad, The Dress, 30 to 50 feral hogs. If you knew what any of those were, you spend too much time online. And hey, I do too. 16th Minute of Fame is a new weekly podcast hosted by me, Jamie Loftus, where every week I take a closer look at an internet character of the day. Who were they? What made them so notorious? Why did the internet choose them? And what does a person do when they're suddenly confronted with more attention than the human psyche can handle? I'll be talking to internet historians, experts, and yes, the main characters themselves to get a fuller picture. Because I think that even outside individual experiences, a character of the day tells us something about how the internet worked at that time and how the attention economy developed into the freaky three-headed dragon it is today. Together, we probably won't be able to properly log out, but we can take a walk down scary internet memory lane and see one day a little more clearly. Listen to 16th Minute of Fame on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi there, I'm Bob Pittman, Chairman and CEO of iHeartMedia. I'm excited to announce a new season of my podcast, Math and Magic, Stories from the Frontiers of Marketing. Our guests this season remind us to embrace change and fearlessly look toward the future. Like Andrew Jarecki, award-winning filmmaker and creator of Movie Phone.
The studios didn't really control the theaters didn't control the studios. And I thought, well, there's a window in here where I could make things easier for the consumer and also make something that would be very useful for the industry.
Or Kellen Kenny, Chief Marketing and Growth Officer at AT&T, who installed fiber in customers' houses rather than leading from afar.
It is so crucial that you spend time with the customers. That is the best lesson.
In these exciting times, we're looking to the math, the strategy and analytics, and the magic, the creative spark, more than ever. Listen to a brand new season of Math and Magic on our very own iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Every week on Talk Easy with Sam Fragoso, I invite an artist, writer, or politician to come to the table and speak from the heart in ways I imagine you haven't heard from them before. Some of my favorites are with Tom Hanks, Margaret Atwood, Questlove, Cate Blanchett, and Oscar Isaac. If that sounds like a varied group of people, it's because it is. I always wanted to make a show where one week we could sit with a politician like Beto O'Rourke, the next an author like Min-Jin Lee, or TV titans like Bill Hader and Quinta Brunson. Basically, this is a podcast driven by curiosity and an abundance of research. Conversations where people actually start to sound like people. In recent weeks, I sat with Dan Levy, Ava DuVernay, Benny Safdie, and the editor of The New Yorker, David Remnick. You can listen to Talk Easy with Sam Fragoso on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. I hope to see you there.
And now it's time for the lightning round. Pew, pew.
Boy, with perfect lightning happening
I
in the
know.
background.
We should have just waited for the lightning in the background.
Oh, it's coming. It's
coming. All right. So, Scott, this is our vulnerability round, and we want to know, we're all going to answer, have you been overbilled? And what was it, or what did you do about it?
Yeah. So
story.
Of course we had the twins with the sonograms where we got balance billed every time. As you know, I'm only 35, but I look 50. So of course, I've always got something happening, and no, I'm actually 50. And so, so I actually went in for a dental appointment. Dentists are wonderful people, and you don't get much benefit. And there's something big, which is your dentist not submitting the claim to your insurance, your dental insurance, because they want maximum dollars. They don't want, $500 for that crown. They want $1,500 for that crown. And so it was, here's your bill. And we're like, wow, HealthLock said this doesn't look right because it's the same price as the bill. Oh, we forgot to submit it to insurance. So that was my latest was a dental bill, actually.
Wow, we forgot.
About $600. Yeah, forgot.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, man. Jill?
So I am the person who calls ahead of time. Thankfully, I have not yet had an experience of an emergency in my adulthood, at least, where I've been surprised by a bill. I am very, very diligent to shop around, get good faith estimates, and make sure that the bills are in line with the good faith estimate. But that did happen to me recently where I was quoted something astronomical. I had to have a procedure done that required anesthesia that was going to be done in the hospital, and the hospital, just for the hospital component, because through this process I learned the hospital bills separate from anesthesia, bills separate from surgeon, and none of them know what each other's going to bill. They're all totally on different islands. So 3 different places you have to call, and just the hospital, just to rent their room for an hour, was going to try and charge me $33,000.
Oh my goodness.
And that just sounded like way too much for a 15-minute procedure. So I ended up being able to shop around and find a place that would only charge $2,500 for the hour to rent their room. That's my story of how I handled a possible overbill, or what I would have deemed too large of a bill.
Yeah. It's so worth it to call. It is. This is one of those things where it is worth it. If you don't have time to call and negotiate your phone, your internet, your insurance, this is worth the money. This is worth the time.
It was shocking to me, and you pointed this out already, Scott, how much of a disparity there can be even within a geographic location on pricing. I mean, these places were 10 miles away from each other. One wanted $33,000, another wanted $2,500. So yeah, I mean, you can shop around. It's not just one price everywhere.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Jill, that's just common. It just is. And, there's sometimes there's good reasons for that, and sometimes there aren't. And that's the quality choice, right? So we're talking about price. You may have wanted that $33,000. Maybe it was open heart surgery you were going to have. And it's like, I'll pay for that, right?
15-minute open heart surgery. In and out.
I want them in and out.
Hey, with AI these days, right? Boom.
Yeah. For me, I was billed, my son was billed accidentally for a test. They were testing for RSV, not for flu. We already knew he did not have flu, but when they were running the test, they accidentally ran both because it's just like common. So when they gave me the results of the test that were negative, they said, "Oh, and we also tested for flu. We're not going to make you pay for it. That was an accident on their part." So I get the bill, and the test for the flu test is on there. So I just go, and I'm in the office for a visit, and billing is right there. So it was really easy. She just came out and was, I was like, "Hey, they told me that they weren't going to bill for this, that the test was an accident." And she's like, "Okay." And so she took it off, and I didn't have to pay for it. So that one was very easy.
Oh, yeah.
But it came because I paid attention to the itemized bill because instead of just paying it. So Scott, when you say don't pay up front or don't pay without taking a look at stuff, don't do it. When we had to get tubes in Atlas's ears, they wanted me to pay $1,000 up front. And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Oh, okay. How much can you pay?" And I was like, "I will pay $500 because that's what I want to pay." And there was nothing they could do. So that's all I paid. So you have, especially with a system that's this flippy floppy with pricing.
Flippy floppy. That's our take on the medical system in the United States.
Oh my gosh. Scott, thank you so much for coming on. Before the tornado comes for you, can you tell us where to get more information on HealthLock?
Yeah. Again, HealthLock.com. Obviously, we're on all the social media as well, but HealthLock.com really it's got videos on there of people with their testimonials. It's got some, easy to understand videos of how the process works, and privacy control and savings. The onboarding takes just a few minutes. And hey, let's go see if we can find you some lost money.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Jen.
All right. Sweet. Thank you so much. That was really great. And after we got off of recording with Scott, he also said, because I had mentioned this and identity theft, if your identity gets stolen, reclaiming it will take you days of your life, just negotiating overbilling, days of your life. Those are the two resources that really might be worth your money to pay for services that do that for you. And he said that, and I didn't know this, HealthLock actually has you can add on to it their premium service, $30 a month, and it includes financial theft protection.
Yeah.
Like that, which is cheaper than all the other places that do that for you. And I think MasterCard users get a free 90-day trial of that premium service. So double check. They get a 90-day free of some kind of premium offer in addition to the general free service that all MasterCard users get.
There's not a lot of subscriptions that I'm out here thinking we should all be having, but ones that save you thousands of dollars and hours of time with very real potential risks. That is some peace of mind for sure.
Yeah.
We're not sponsored by them.
After we got off the call, we're like, should we be having them give us money? Like, because they're not. And I was like, should we have asked?
We're not very good at that.
We're not. So
we just truly believe in bringing you products and services that are going to be helpful to you.
Yeah.
And this one we do genuinely believe in, which we think helps bring you more authentic content. We just are going to have to figure out how to get paid eventually.
Yeah. Well, this book is available for pre-order soon, so we're gonna really need some people to show up. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, and we love reading your reviews. That is a way that you can support us. Again, not monetarily. You just write us a review.
We're gonna need to pay some bills eventually.
That helps. But we liked this one from Canadian Lesletti. You will not be bored.
Woo.
Saving money sounds boring, right? Not true. The Frugal Friends podcast turns financial responsibility into something that is fun. So often I am trying to find podcasts about personal finance and can't bear to make myself listen to the whole thing as it's so boring. The Frugal Friends podcast is so fun and makes me laugh, all while learning new ways to be a better steward of my money. And I feel like I have 2 new friends. Thanks, guys, for everything.
Oh my gosh, Canadian Lesletti. We are your friends. Thank you.
I'm so glad that we're not boring you, that you're listening and leaving reviews. If you also feel not bored and you enjoy listening, leave us a review. That does help us, and it doesn't cost you money.
Yes. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Sirianni.
Jen, this has nothing to do with the podcast episode.
Fantastic.
So I went on a deep cleaning rampage recently.
Typical.
As one does. And
this is normal.
One of the things that I decided to clean, because I haven't in a couple of years, is the very thick mattress pad that we have. Because when we first bought our mattress, I found it to be not very comfy. And rather than getting a totally new mattress, I got a thick mattress pad to put on top of it. But it cannot fit in our washing machine. So I finally decided, even though it's quite cumbersome and annoying and time consuming to do, to take it to the laundromat to wash it.
Ooh.
So we did that. And then Eric put it he was responsible for finishing up drying it and bringing it back home. So he did that and thought it was just damp. So he brought it home thinking, I don't need to put it into the dryer at the laundromat one more time. It's just a little damp. We'll let it dry out at home. So we did. We laid it all out. And by the time we're ready for bed, still not quite dry. So then we're like, well, maybe we could shove it into our dryer for just a couple of minutes. Because while it couldn't fit into our washing machine, it could fit into our dryer.
Uh-huh.
So we do that. And then I start to smell something funny.
No.
Yes.
How?
It was still too bulky, and there is a heating element in our dryer. Our dryer's pretty old, so it got too shoved and pressed up against the heating element that it started to burn it. I quickly removed it. It was only in for about 5 minutes. And now me wanting everything to be clean and nice and take care of my stuff, because that's the good thing to do and that's the way we do things.
Yeah.
Now leads me with this scrunched up spot, because it kind of melted the fibers a bit.
Where is the spot?
It's on my side of the bed, but kind of lower and off to the left, my left thigh would potentially be touching it. But I did put the sheets back on and I can't notice it. It's not perceivable to my body. But man, was that frustrating, because here I am trying to wash something, make it last longer. And I kind of ruined it, but didn't ruin it enough to have to buy something new. And thankfully I can just cover it up with a sheet, but I just changed my sheets again recently. And it's this reminder of my
Of your error.
efforts to take care of things and it not going well, but not giving myself permission to just replace it because it doesn't actually need to be replaced.
Yeah.
And it's a decent practice for me. I don't love it, but this like living in imperfection and being content with my failures and living with them, it's like this deep-rooted metaphor for me every time I change my sheets. And it really does bother me, but we're going to live with it.
Everything in your house is so pristine and sterile. I'm so...
Now you know.
Sad.
It's not. I've got a dirty little secret and it looks
And it's
dirty.
in your
It looks
bedroom.
like this brown smudge,
Ooh.
fused fibers. Mm-hmm.
I love it. I'm so sorry.
Are you sorry or do you love it? You are beaming over here at the news.
I do hate it for you.
Wow.
Bean Dad, The Dress, 30 to 50 Feral Hogs. If you knew what any of those were, you spend too much time online. And hey, I do too. 16th Minute of Fame is a new weekly podcast hosted by me, Jamie Loftus. And every week we take a closer look at an internet character of the day. Who are they? What made them so notorious? How did the internet or the algorithm choose them? And what does a person do when they're suddenly confronted with more attention than the human psyche can handle? Listen to 16th Minute of Fame on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's brand new, Season 2. I'm Marissa Thalberg.
And I'm Stephen Wolf-Badeta, and we're excited to be back having bigger, bolder, and always real conversations.
Straight from the C-suite front lines of marketing, media, and more.
We have great friends joining from people you may know, like Vilmer Valderrama and Bobby Burke.
And people you'll want to know. So grab a coffee or, hey, even an Aperol Spritz and come join us on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart.
Listen to brand new on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Every week on Talk Easy with Sam Fragoso, I invite an artist, writer, or politician to come to the table and speak from the heart in ways you probably haven't heard from them before. Some of my favorites are with Tom Hanks, Questlove, and Cate Blanchett. In recent weeks, I talked to actor Dan Levy, director Ava DuVernay, and the editor of The New Yorker, David Remnick. You can listen to Talk Easy on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.